So this is the third and final video looking at Hitler's rise to power. And at the end of the last video, Hitler had just become Chancellor in 1933. So now we need to look at the next period where Hitler consolidates his power and becomes a dictator, or the Führer as he was known. And so just because Hitler was Chancellor, and remember that's only number 2 in power, he still had a lot of powerful enemies. So in terms of political parties, the Communists were still a very powerful and popular political party that had a lot of public support due to the desperation of the times in Germany. The president above him, Paul von Hindenburg, still hated Hitler and could still remove Hitler if he wanted to. And then Hitler's stormtroopers, the SA, were also getting restless, and Hitler sensed that he had to keep them under control, otherwise they could cause him a lot of trouble as well. And so Hitler had a stroke of luck earlier when the Great Depression hit Germany that catapulted him into power, but now he needed another one. And this is what it was. The Reichstag building caught fire and burnt down. So this is less than a month after he became Chancellor, and the outcome was that a communist man was actually arrested and charged and executed with starting the fire. Whether that's the truth or not, there's a lot of suspicion that the Nazis themselves might have caused the fire and planted that evidence. But either way, it was a huge stroke of luck for Hitler, because all of a sudden the communists had been caught burning down the Parliament building. So that kicked in those emergency powers that Hitler could use, and they were actually Hindenburg could use them, but Hitler called for them. That was that loophole in the Weimar Constitution, if you remember back to that earlier video. And here we have an emergency. And so Hitler, on behalf of Hindenburg, were given these emergency powers where Hitler was in charge of the police, and his SA basically could go on a riot through the city, beating up communists, and it was all sanctioned by the law. And so this is where that Article 48 can really get abused in times of an emergency. And so here's some other ways in which Hitler benefited from that Reichstag fire. It resulted in the Communist Party being banned, which then, all of their support shifted automatically over to the Nazi Party. And this is the first step, even though it's a bit of luck in consolidating the Nazi Party's power and Hitler's power. This was the first time that Article 48 had been used since the Constitution was established. But to become a dictator and to have some real power, he actually needed to be enabled by Hindenburg and needed Hindenburg's permission. Because Germany was in such a state of chaos, this enabling act, which was given to Hitler on behalf of Hindenburg, basically turned Hitler into a dictator. And so they needed 75% of the Reichstag to vote and approve that enabling act. And due to intimidation and the SA, etc., it wasn't too difficult for this enabling act to get passed, giving Hitler a lot more power than he initially had. So now he's one step closer, very, very close to taking the top job in Germany. So here's a quick summary of how the Enabling Act actually increased Hitler's power, as you can see here. So now Hitler, in this time of emergency, is the sole lawmaker. He is in charge of the police, he's in charge of the economy, he's in charge of calling elections, and he has the powers to really manipulate the German government for his own benefit. So that last group in society that Hitler needed to control was his SA. He felt that they were getting too powerful, and he realised that if they wanted to start an uprising against him, they could. Their leader, Ernst Röhm, who you can see here, was particularly egotistical and aggressive, and Hitler and him had been friends for a long time, but he could sense a restlessness, and he could sense a competition developing between the German army, the regular army, and the SA. The army wanted to incorporate the SA into the normal German army, and the SA wanted to actually break up the army to join the SA, if that makes sense. And so there's a real sense of competition about who was the legitimate force behind the Nazi Party. And Hitler was really worried of what would happen if Rome rebelled, because he was also very popular amongst the SA. And so what Hitler decided to do was to go with the army and actually execute a lot of his top SA personnel. So he actually used the SS. This gets a bit confusing. The SS, who was Hitler's special bodyguard, he used them to assassinate a lot of SA leaders, including Ernst Röhm, to not just weed out the dangerous members of the SA that he was worried about, but also to send a message of fear and terror to show that he had complete control and making everybody effectively scared for their life. And so this was an important move, Hitler choosing the army over his own SA, and he realised, maybe he'd learnt from the Munich Putsch earlier on, that the army was very well trained and disciplined. The army was the only real threat to removing him from power. He thought they had more of a chance of doing that than the SA, so he was loyal to the army. The army had the support of big business, and he needed a strong, well-trained army if he was going to later invade other countries, not just his street thugs who were the SA. And so that was why Hitler chose to go with the army over his SA. And so wiping out a lot of powerful members of that SA was another important step towards Hitler becoming a dictator, and really sent a message of brutality and fear throughout not just the people of Germany, but within the Nazi Party itself. And then the last important event that led to Hitler becoming a complete dictator was the death of President von Hindenburg. Because Hitler had gotten rid of the threat of Rome and a lot of those senior SA men, the army were thankful, and the army became even more loyal towards Hitler and liked him even more. And so once von Hindenburg died, the army were quite happy to extend that loyalty to Hitler, and they swore an oath of personal loyalty to Hitler. And so this is it now. Hitler's reached the pinnacle. He basically, now that he assumed the role of president, he combined that with his former role of chancellor all into one new role called the Führer, the leader. And so now he was a total dictator of Nazi Germany. And so here you can see a quick summary of the factors we've discussed. So first there was the Reichstag fire, which was coincidentally lit by a communist, and that allowed Hitler to use the Article 48, the emergency powers. From there, the Enabling Act allowed Hitler to have special independent powers of his own under President von Hindenburg. And soon after, the communists were banned as a party, as a result of causing this emergency, and so a lot of the public support shifted to the Nazi Party. And from there, Hitler had to, control the muscle behind the Nazi movement. And so, feeling that the SA were getting too powerful, he, along with his new SS, his bodyguard, and the army, eliminated a lot of top SA officials. And so now he had full support of the army, including this new specialised SS body that he used as well. And now he is well and truly, dictator, Führer, completely, absolutely, of Germany. And so now, in the next couple of videos, we're going to be looking at the Nazi state of Germany now that it is complete, and how Hitler, Nazified every aspect of German life and brought everybody under his control.